Welcome back, artists. I'm Waiya Paints, and this week I've got some mail. Dear Waiya, 'tis I, the Macho, your oldest, most generous, and well-endowed patron. To his credit, I know two of those are facts. A few videos ago, when you were giving thanks to your patrons, there was a mistake, and my name was not readable. Let's see. Alright, fair enough. Since I know you already torture your editor for mistakes. Me? Never. Maybe you'd like to mix it up with a painting challenge instead. So, how about painting your next project using only craft paints? You know, for your most generous patron. I see what you did there. And I'm going to address that and everybody here, right here and now. If you think that you can just give me financial support and tell me what to do, you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. 100% right. And I'm not a millionaire. I'm a sometimes several thousandaire that pays rent. So it wouldn't take much money. It wouldn't take much money at all. So you darn right we're doing a painting challenge. And it just so happens that this week's sponsor, 3DX Files, sent me over Baxter Stockman STL that'll be just perfect. It's got a cartoon style that'll be a great fit for this challenge. So, meet me over at the painting table. I'm gonna grab my brushes. Let's get started. As usual, I'm starting with a base. And here, we have a straightforward rocky base. So, Espresso will kick us off. Now, this paint is very different from what I usually use, and a lot closer to what you would find in a Hobby Lobby. One of the first major differences, this paint has a cost point of about 75 cents per 59mm bottle, while my go-to paints run about $7 to $9 per 19mm bottle. If they were in comparable bottles, this Craft Smart paint would cost only a quarter. That's the kind of savings anyone in this hobby would be interested in learning more about. So I figured putting it through its paces would key you all into what to expect. While I have done a painting challenge with this paint before, it was on a highly textured model that proved daunting to wrangle. I'm hoping with larger open surfaces, we can get this paint to shine. As you can see, I've run into the first issue for Craft Smart, coverage. Although I'm using a color like brown, which should cover well, I end up with patchy results. Now, a little nitpicky thing I've had with this line is that the names are bad. This is what they call dark gray. Dark gray. Maybe they were looking at it in the dark. Once again, just like with the brown, I'm getting terrible coverage. But at least it's expected using a gray, dark gray over black. So I was prepared to do a few passes to get it to look the way I like. Which brings me to why this paint is acting the way it does. When it comes to paint, it's made using three main ingredients: water, medium, and pigment. And as you can imagine, the pigment is the most expensive ingredient. Time to swap over to Plum and start handling his skin. When you're using a product at a price point far below what you usually use, you should expect a loss in quality. And here, it's a significant drop. I wouldn't say this is the worst paint I've used, but it's bad. And quite frankly, will work against you when painting on resin sculpts. But it can be done. So long as you accept what you save in money, you will have to pay in time. Usually, base coats like this will get full coverage in 2, maybe 3 coats, but every single color of this project was looking to take 6 to 8 coats, and I was expecting more for the lighter colors. Like this suede I used for his undershirt. Along with the low pigment load, you also have to give up the fancy additives that the more premium brands mix in to aid with drying, bonding, and finish, which is understandable, as this stuff was meant for construction paper and popsicle crafts. Without those additives, I had a significantly longer dry time to go along with all of those extra layers. That extra time ended up making a 2-day project stretch out into 7, as I'd paint for a couple of minutes and then have to wait a solid 20 minutes for it to dry. If I didn't wait that time, the layer wouldn't fully cure, and when I add the next, it would reactivate just like a contrast paint and put me back to square one. So Keep the extra time cost in mind when factoring in your savings with this paint. Next, the hard choice between dark blue or navy for his pants. Which to pick? I gotta say, my years of experience is pulling me towards the dark blue. As with other colors, getting an even coat proved difficult, but by this time, I had settled into alternating regular brushstrokes and stippling layers to cut down on the required count for full coverage to 5. While I put those on, I like to touch on another aspect of this paint that we have to contend with, and that's the finish. As you may have noticed, it is super matte, almost dusty. That matte finish makes it very hard to do any kind of layering that I normally do because it's a very thirsty surface. As soon as you touch it with paint, it's going to soak it in and stain it, after which we won't have any control in moving it and massaging it in place. That's why a sculpt like this is kind of perfect for this paint. With a cartoon style, flat coloring is a great fit. It lets us skip highlighting altogether, but we'll still need to think about shading to give Baxter a little bit more volume and definition. Next up, olive green for this face skin. Yeah, I know it's weird. I thought so too. But then I found this still from the old show and his face was green. In more modern versions, Dr. Stockman has more of a blue teal head, but I want to go old school. So weird green head it is. Going back to shading, if we were to use a wash on this paint, we would face the same issues of staining and lack of control. To address this, I opted for a varnish to lock down all the pigments and protect them from my ink. In fact, the satin finish is going to give me a much easier task of blending out the shadows. And don't worry, there won't be too many. If we overload it, we're going to lose that classic 80s toy vibe, which I definitely want to keep. Next, I grabbed this tan for his wings. Here's where I really understood just how delicate this paint was. Even with full cure cycles, the oil from my fingers would rip up spots. While a lot of times you would see painters using tweezers and other mounts to hold a part they want to paint to avoid touching it for this very reason. In my years of using Vallejo and Army Painter paints, I've never had the issue outside of touching still wet paint. But this stuff, if you even look at it wrong, it seems to just fall off. If this happens to you, try to just let it go and do a bit of touch up while you remember how much money you saved. Now for a bit of burgundy for his eyes and the I-beam. Now, it may seem like a lazy choice to double dip on a color, but one of the hallmarks of 80s cartoons was the low budgets they were produced on, which usually meant getting reuse out of colors with a smaller palette. But outside of that, this was just more of the same 5 or so coats to get full saturation. Then, for a bit of fun, I pulled out bright red for the hydrant. I gotta tell you, this color was hands down the worst in the set. I swear, around coat 6, it felt like I was painting in reverse. Also, it smelled really weird, like this combination of Flintstone vitamins and cabbage. I wish I could tell you why it smelled like that, but I have no clue. None whatsoever. I'm just completely stumped. I've never had a paint make me feel sick until today. You know, it's just wild, just wild. Finally, terracotta filled in for his hair. As usual, orange over black was a painful process, made a bit more torturous by this paint that looks even and vibrant when you put it on, only to dry in patchy messes. Just remember this mantra: you can get coverage over anything with enough layers. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about dumping this paint in a bowl and just dunking his head in. Don't do that, Waiya. Just don't do that. Just think happy thoughts. You good. You good. We're buzzing our way through Baxter, but I'd like to take a moment to thank my subscribers over on Patreon. Even though I'm currently surrounded by 5 major fires in LA, it warms my heart that you guys dig deep and show your support for the channel every month. I can't thank you enough. If you would like to join the Painting Pantheon, you'll find a link to my Patreon in the description below. I also want to send a special thank you to this week's sponsor, 3DX Files. They've provided today's model and been a longtime supporter of the channel, and this one doesn't disappoint either. If you want to get your hands on this and many other amazing STLs, be sure to check out their link in the description below as well. Maybe take a look and check out what they're brewing up. You might just find your next project. For now, let's get back to the good doctor. He's ready to get done. Returning back to our challenge, a simple brown. This would have been espresso, but I was running low after how much paint it took to do the base. I really didn't want to risk running out, and I gotta say, once again, it almost hurts to see a color like brown cover so badly. Seeing this really hammers home that this paint was meant to go on paper. Something that's going to do the heavy lifting when it comes to adding vibrance. See, with this paint, the medium refracting light is what's tricking your eye to think that there's complete coverage. Once that medium dries out, you'll see just how little pigment is actually in the paint. Now, I know I must sound like a broken record at this point about the pigment load, but I cannot overstress how much extra work this paint is going to take to make it look like some of the other stuff I've done on the channel. But I'm also saying this so that my editor knows it's the paint, not me. Now, believe it or not, CraftSmart makes a line of metallics as well, and I'm gonna try it out here. Surprisingly, the metallic is pretty nice. It's still not great, but compared to every other color, this has behaved a lot more like I expected it to. So I gave the gun a quick rough detailed dry brush. Then the rebar got a rough overbrush base. Now, I don't want these completely based, so I just let the texture create some quick and interesting shadows. This chunky look will fit in good as a background element. And just because I was curious, I gave the rim of the tire a full coverage base. Here's where it fell a little bit short of what I wanted it to be, but really, it still fit with the overall look of the piece. Of all the paints so far, this is a solid 4 out of 10. All of the others have been 2s. Before I seal everything up, I just have a couple more details to go. First, aqua for his bow tie. A pretty standard paint within the line section if you ask me. Then a touch of what they call grape for the toenails. This, however, is not great. Sorry craft paints, that's another swing and a miss when it comes to naming. After a quick off-camera varnish, it was time for shading with Nuln Oil. And I know, this isn't a craft paint, but the challenge was to paint with craft paint. Nothing was said about washes. Your old boy Waiya is a wily one. And just as well, an all-over wash really helped add a bit of depth to the base props. While there was a thought to wash the ground as well, I kinda liked the shiny look, as it reminded me of the old injection molded plastic of the classic toys. Next, I swapped over to blue tone to add some definition and detail to the pants. Don't forget to put a swipe under each one of these folds. It might be very slight, but it'll add a bit of something. Finally, for the face, I switched to a dark brown tone, starting with an outline on the eye. Then I slowly blended it out towards the middle. Then, after rinsing out my brush, I came back to wipe down and clean off the center of the eye as much as possible. This is a super quick and easy technique to get some very interesting looking peepers. I continued to use this same technique over the rest of the face along details that I thought got a little lost at a distance. Now, it might seem a bit unbalanced to put so much effort into shading the face compared to the rest of the body, but this is because the head and the face are going to draw the most attention. So it should be given that extra time so that the details are a bit less ambiguous compared to the rest of the body. And this generally falls in line with the style of these cartoons, as a lot of the times these characters would only be seen from the chest up, so their head and face should be instantly recognizable with the most detail. So after giving the hair a heavy wash to bring out all the nice surface detail, I glued it up and called him done. And wow, I gotta say, he came out better than expected. And these paints did not make it easy for me. Would I recommend using craft paint for your 3D prints? No, not really. I still stand by using it in situations where I need to cover large surface areas like rocky bases, but even in those cases, it's going to need the helping hand of some washes and varnishes to make it look vibrant enough. This is where I really have to hand it to our sponsor with this sculpt. Not only did it tickle that nostalgic corner of my brain, but it was possibly the best canvas for this paint to show what it's made of. And with its large accessible details, this would make it a good introductory paint project for a younger hobbyist in the house. If you'd like to get your hands on this and many other STLs, be sure to check out 3DX Files using the link below. For now, unfortunately, the Los Angeles fire is burning around me. Currently, I'm fairly safe, but with the winds expected to pick up tomorrow, who knows? My hope is to get this uploaded quickly and play it by ear. Hopefully it's just me being overly cautious. I'll have a new episode soon. Until then, thanks for watching, stay safe, and always enjoy the process.